Hi everybody. My name is Jerry Wise. I've been working with individuals and families for over 45 years, helping them get their family of origin out of them. This video is entitled Narcissistic Parents, Weird Mannerisms of Their Abused Adult Children. So adult children of narcissists tend to have these traits. And they're mannerisms that we learn from abuse, from the rage, from the narcissism, from the self-centeredness, from the lack of empathy that we may have learned growing up with a narcissistic parent. One of the weird mannerisms as a result of having a narcissistic parent is the apology reflex. And you probably know what I mean by that. Adults who grow up with narcissistic parents frequently engage in almost compulsive apologizing. And we apologize for actions and circumstances that are not even our responsibility. And we develop this as a way to avoid conflict at home. You know those people who apologize too much. You know when you have apologized so much. And I remember that was certainly something I found myself doing quite frequently. I would just apologize for everything. I even vaguely remember feeling like I should apologize for the weather, that it wasn't going to be what it needed to be for our church outing many years ago. That's how excessive that apology reflex can be. Another mannerism as a result of having a narcissistic parent that we may learn is avoidance of eye contact in arguments. Adults who grew up with narcissistic parents often look away or look down during confrontations, a subtle defense mechanism cultivated from the need to appear submissive or non-threatening in the parental home, maybe even to try to seem invisible. Another mannerism as a result of growing up in a narcissistic home with a narcissistic parent is selective mutism in groups. Adults who grew up with narcissistic parents occasionally choose not to speak at all in group settings, especially when topics of personal importance are discussed, due to the fear of criticism or belittlement that they experienced in their family growing up. I remember when I did groups, therapy groups for many, many years, codependent therapy groups, addiction therapy groups, mental health family groups for those who had family members who were having mental illness issues, and that there was a lot of resistance for many people to come and be a part of a group because they just felt too anxious, too nervous. They couldn't talk. They feared judgment. And in fact, when I began going to a group therapy many years ago, there were times I even walked out of a group therapy session because I couldn't handle the visibility that I had, and that I had to talk, and that I wondered what everybody was thinking, and I'm sure I'm being judged, and that I'm doing something wrong. All of those feelings that go along with these types of mannerisms. Another kind of a weird mannerism as a result of growing up with a narcissistic parent is overexplanation of simple decisions. Adults who grew up with narcissistic parents provide detailed justification for everyday choices, a habit developed from years of having to defend personal preferences to a controlling parent. And someone might say, well, were you planning on, a boss might ask you, were you planning on taking off Thursday as a personal day? And instead of just saying, yes, that is my plan, the adult child of a narcissist will go into all the reasons why they're going to do that, justifying their decision. They're answering questions that the boss isn't even asking. And that's that over-explanation problem that we may experience. Another weird mannerism as a result of being an adult child of a narcissist is being the fixer all the time. Adults who grew up with narcissistic parents constantly feel the need to resolve others' issues. a role adopted from having to mediate or mitigate problems, lessen problems because of their narcissistic parent, often at a personal cost. And again, the parent may be inappropriate. We then will step in and try to make it better, either for others or for ourselves or for the parent. And then we're always being the fixer, the therapist, the one who understands, the one who mediates. And we must do that so that we will be accepted and also deal with our own shame and guilt over having a narcissistic parent. Another mannerism as a result of being an adult child of a narcissist is setting boundaries too late or not at all. Adults who grew up with narcissistic parents struggle to establish personal limits timely or effectively, a consequence of growing up where personal boundaries were either not respected or not recognized. And again, I think that's what's important is our boundaries are not timely. And then when we do have boundaries or we do choose boundaries, they're not effective because we don't have the confidence or the solid sense of self to make them effective. And again, any of us can make our boundaries effective. I didn't say any of us could change other people and make them do what we want them to do. But even if I choose to make a boundary and someone doesn't keep it, well, then we won't be communicating much anymore. That's me making my boundary effective. And again, they may not want to change, but I can have effective boundaries. I just need to know what are the consequences going to be if they don't follow them. Another weird mannerism that we have growing up in a family with a narcissistic parent is getting easily reactive. Adults who grew up with narcissistic parents demonstrate a heightened emotional response to minor provocations rooted in a hypersensitivity developed from navigating and maneuvering in a volatile home environment. If you've always got something going on, if you're living in a household of drama, if you're living in a household of roller coaster emotionally, then it's easy for us to leave the home and continue to take that reactivity with us into adulthood. And that's where I think it's important to begin to get a number of these things out of us. And for us to become us, not what the family shaped in us. And I'm going to talk about that a little more at the end of the video here. Another weird mannerism that an adult child of a narcissist may have is feeling small or inflated. Adults who grew up with narcissistic parents may experience feelings of insignificance or exaggerated self-importance as a coping or defensive mechanism against the erratic affirmations and criticisms from their parent. I certainly think a lot of us can probably identify with the feelings of insignificance. You know, I'm just not important. Why would anyone care about me? My voice doesn't mean anything. My opinions don't matter. Now, what about this exaggerated self-importance? I remember having a boss that I worked for in a hospital, and she grew up in an alcoholic, narcissistic home. And she would go around with exaggerated self-importance that wasn't based on anything. It didn't have any substance to it. And if you challenged it, she would just crumble. But she would have this exaggerated self-importance. And I think of it as kind of like whistling past the cemetery. That I'm really afraid, but I'm going to whistle like, oh, there's nothing wrong, there's nothing going on. And she would manage like that. And of course, it would irritate other people. But if you dare challenge it, she just folds or becomes vindictive because of how she was abused growing up. Another weird mannerism that adult children of narcissists can have is never operating from their true self. Adults who grew up with narcissistic parents may struggle to identify or operate from their true self. as they often do not have a clear understanding of what it means. Their sense of identity may be overshadowed or suppressed by the need to conform to parental expectations and demands, and then as we become an adult, conform to the expectations and demands of others around us, leaving them unsure of their own desires, benefits, and values. You may have some or all of these mannerisms. The good news is that there are fixes and recovery for all of them. Let me give you some self-differentiation tips. First of all, remember, these mannerisms are not the real you. Don't forget that. They are what you have been programmed to have. They're the family Wi-Fi. They come from all of the experiences growing up in a narcissistic home. Second of all, learn to detach from the family super self. In other words, a family that's dysfunctional has one big super self that everybody partakes of. They don't have selves. They have one big super self that they have an umbilical cord to. And I discuss that more in my free training, which is listed below. Doesn't cost you anything. 84 minutes of training. Check that out. But we want to begin to detach from the family super self. In other words, how am I differentiated from my family? How would I differ from them? There's some things, I have some values that go along with my family that I still have because I've chosen them. They've gone through the Jerry filter or the true Jerry self filter, and they're mine. They may be like my family, but I'm not just absorbing them or having been programmed, and that's just what I believe. So we want to learn to detach from the family super self. Thirdly, ask yourself, what are the downsides of letting go of some or all of these mannerisms and becoming your true self? For example, let's talk about easily reactive. If you worked on being calm and chose not to be reactive to those around you, what would be the downsides for you? You might say, well, I know what the upsides would be. I'd feel calmer. I'd feel more a solid sense of self. No. What are the downsides? And then many of us as adult children would say, well, if I'm not reactive, then someone doesn't know I'm upset. Or they need to know they're wrong. So I need to be reactive. But actually, what is the purpose of that? You think that will make them be clearer about being wrong? Probably not. And you're just now off your square and reactive, and they're just getting reactive to your reactivity, and it goes back and forth. And so I think there are downsides to letting go of these mannerisms that are problematic. If I see myself as invisible, and I let go of my invisibility, what's the downsides of being visible? Exploring those can be a powerful way towards recovery. I want you to sign up for the online training below. The 84 minutes costs nothing. Then I'd like you to sign up for the online program Road to Self, in which I go into detail about all of these things and help you with tools and ways in which you can truly recover and be your real self. I hope you'll subscribe, like, and comment on this video. I'm glad you joined me today. Have a great day, and be wise.